October 17th, 1946. Dawn. The gymnasium of Nuremberg prison was quiet now. The scaffolds still stood, the ropes still hung, the trapdoors were still open. Master Sergeant John C. Woods walked back in alone. He looked at what he had done. 10 men, dead. Some of them had taken nearly 20 minutes to die. Woods lit a cigarette. He didn't flinch. He didn't pray. He didn't look away. But something happened to him in that room, something he would carry for the rest of his life. This is the story of what the American hangman truly witnessed that night and what it did to him. Most people know the basics. The Nuremberg trials, the verdicts, the executions. What most people don't know is what it looked like from the other side of the rope. Woods wasn't a trained executioner. Before the war, he'd been discharged from the Navy, deemed unstable. He drifted. He found the Army. When they asked for volunteers to handle executions, he raised his hand. He told them he had done it before. He had not. He was given the job anyway, and over the years, he hanged soldiers convicted of murder and rape. Dozens of them. He treated it like a trade, like carpentry, like something a man could be proud of. He told a reporter once, "I sleep just fine." But Nuremberg was different. The night of October 15th, everything went wrong before it even started. Hermann Göring, the highest-ranking Nazi alive, the man who built the Luftwaffe, the man who created the secret police, had cheated the rope. He bit down on a cyanide capsule hidden somewhere on his person. His body was found on the cot. Blue lips, foam, gone. The star of the show had vanished. Woods was told to proceed anyway. 10 men remained. The world was watching. There was no postponement. He walked into the gymnasium. He checked the ropes. He checked the trapdoors. And somewhere in that moment, a decision may have been made. The first man came in just after 1 in the morning. Woods did his job. He placed the hood. He set the noose. He pulled the lever. The man fell and didn't die. The trapdoor opening was too narrow. The man's head struck the wooden frame on the way down. The drop wasn't long enough to snap the neck cleanly. Instead of a swift death, the rope pulled tight, slowly. The witnesses stood in silence. Journalists, military officers, a chaplain. They listened. From inside the draped wooden box below the platform came sounds that no one in that room ever forgot. A man strangling, fighting, slowly losing. It took over 10 minutes. Woods stood above it. He watched the rope go taut. He watched the seconds tick by on someone else's watch. Did he feel anything? Later, he would say no. He would say it was just a job. He would say those men deserved worse. But the witnesses told a different story. They said Woods looked pale, that he chewed his gum faster, that at one point he gripped the railing of the scaffold and didn't let go. Because here is what no one tells you about an execution that goes wrong. The hangman has to stand there. He cannot leave. He cannot stop it. He can only wait. And for 10 minutes, Woods stood directly above a dying man and listened. Then the second man came. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth. Each time, something went wrong. The ropes were too short. The drops were miscalculated. Men who were supposed to die in seconds lasted 5 minutes, 8 minutes, more. One man bled from the head wound on the way down. Another fought the rope with such force that the witnesses could see the wooden enclosure shaking. By the 5th execution, the journalists had stopped writing in their notebooks. They just stood there, pale and silent, watching a night of justice turn into something they couldn't easily name. Was it incompetence? Woods designed the gallows himself. He calculated the drops himself. He had done this before. Some historians say he simply wasn't skilled enough, that the trapdoors were too small because he measured wrong, that the ropes were too short because he didn't account for the weight of these particular men. But others point to something else. Woods knew who these men were. He had sat in Nuremberg for months. He had heard the testimony, the camps, the mass graves, the orders signed in neat handwriting. Some witnesses believed Woods made a choice, not out of cruelty for its own sake, but because he looked at the men responsible for the deaths of millions and decided that a quick, clean death was more mercy than they had earned. Nobody ever proved it either way. After the last man was pronounced dead, Woods walked through the gymnasium one final time. The bodies had been laid out on the floor, side by side, some with blood on their faces, all with the elongated necks that come from a slow strangulation rather than a clean break. Photographers came in, flash after flash. Woods stood off to the side. He watched them work. He said nothing. Then a reporter asked him how he felt. He smiled. He said, 10 men in 103 minutes. That's fast work. The reporter wrote it down. The quote ran in papers across the world. But the men who had been standing in that gymnasium all night looked at each other and said nothing, because they had watched the same thing Woods had watched, and none of them were smiling. The bodies were cremated in secret. The ashes were scattered in a river outside Munich. No graves, no markers, no place for anyone to mourn or worship. The world moved on quickly. The trials were over. The war was finished. There were countries to rebuild and futures to plan. John C. Woods went back to work. He kept doing executions. He kept telling reporters he loved his job. He kept insisting he felt nothing. But the men who served alongside him said he drank more after Nuremberg, that he got louder, that he talked about that night constantly, circling back to it in conversations that had nothing to do with it. That's what haunting looks like in a man who refuses to admit he's haunted. 3 years later, in July 1950, Woods was on a small island in the Pacific. He was working with electrical equipment. He was electrocuted. He was 35 years old. The army ruled it an accident. Some people said it was karma. Some people said it was just bad luck. Some people said a man who spends his life standing that close to death eventually runs out of distance between himself and it. Here is the question history never fully answers. When John Woods walked through that gymnasium one last time, looked at 10 dead men, and said it was fast work, did he mean it? Or was that the voice of a man who had seen something he couldn't process, reaching for the only armor he had left? He watched men die slowly for almost 2 hours, men he hated, men the world hated, men who had ordered the murder of millions, and still he had to stand there and listen. That is what nobody talks about when they talk about justice. Justice has a cost, and sometimes the person who pays it isn't who you expect.